A high-speed rail line is one of the most expensive things a country can build. On average, around 45 million euros for every kilometer of track. Spend that money in the right place, and you reshape a nation. Spend it in the wrong place, and you get a decade of delays and a political scandal. So why does high-speed rail succeed brilliantly in some countries and stall completely in others? The answer isn't really about engineering. Japan, China, France, and Spain have all built vast, profitable networks. The United States and Britain have spent fortunes for very little track. The difference comes down to four forces working together: the distance a train must cover, the density of the cities it connects, the cost of building it, and the politics and money behind it. Get all four right, and rail wins. Miss them, and no amount of speed can save the project. Start with distance, because it sets the rules for everything else. High-speed rail doesn't compete in a vacuum. It fights cars, conventional trains, and airplanes for the same passengers. And it only wins inside a narrow band of distance. Too short, and the car is simply more convenient. Too long, and the airplane is unbeatable. Everything depends on landing inside the window in between. Picture every journey on a single scale. Below about 150 kilometers, the car rules. There's no station to reach, no schedule to catch, you just drive. Above roughly 800 to 1,000 kilometers, the plane's raw speed overwhelms everything else. But between 150 and 800 kilometers, journeys of 1 to 4 hours, high-speed rail dominates. In its core range, from 150 to 500 kilometers, it routinely captures more than 80% of the combined rail and air market. That band is the entire game. Why does rail win in that band? Because a train station sits in the center of the city, while an airport sits far outside it. On a typical 500-kilometer trip, all the time spent getting to the airport, through security, and waiting to board adds up to about 150 minutes. For rail, that same overhead is closer to 60. That 90-minute head start, before either vehicle has moved, is what high-speed rail is really selling, and it's why the line must end in the heart of the city, not the suburbs. Landing inside the distance window is necessary, but it isn't enough. A high-speed line costs the same to build whether 10,000 people ride it a day or 100,000. To pay back that enormous fixed cost, you need huge flows of passengers, which means you need dense cities, close together, generating millions of trips. Transport planners model this like gravity. The pull between two cities rises with the product of their populations, and falls as the journey between them gets longer or harder. Two huge cities, close together, generate an overwhelming gravitational demand for travel. Two small cities, far apart, generate almost none. This single idea explains why the same technology can be a triumph in one country and a white elephant in another. It all comes down to the shape of where people live. Japan is the textbook case. Its great cities are squeezed onto a narrow coastal plain, the Taihyo Belt, so a single line can string Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka together like beads. The Tokaido Shinkansen, just 515 kilometers long, carries around 170 million passengers a year, running up to 13 trains an hour in each direction. It is so productive that it turns a profit on its operations, a railway that prints money, because the geography was perfect. France proved the same point with a different shape. Its first high-speed line, the LGV Sud-Est, connects Paris directly to Lyon, the country's two great economic hubs, 425 kilometers apart, with little but empty farmland in between. By linking two dense cores and skipping the sparse middle, the line captured over 90% of the combined rail and air market on the route, and paid back its entire construction cost within about 12 years. It also cut air traffic on the corridor in half. Now look at the opposite. The United States is defined by sprawl, low-density cities spread thin and built around the car. Even its most promising private line, Brightline West, reveals the problem. Rather than run all the way into downtown Los Angeles, the line stops at Rancho Cucamonga, a suburban station some 60 miles short of the city center. That choice avoids billions in urban tunneling, but it forces passengers into an extra transfer, weakening the very gravity the project depends on. Even with the right distance and the right density, a project can still collapse under its own cost. And here the gap between countries is staggering, not by a few percent, but by a factor of 30. The deciding number is the cost to build 1 kilometer of line, and what drives it is a single choice. Do you standardize or do you customize? Compare the cost of a kilometer across 5 systems. Spain built the world's second-largest network for about $18 million a kilometer. China, around 17 to 21. France, roughly 25. Then the curve breaks. California's line runs to $151 million a kilometer, and Britain's HS2, with its endless deep tunnels, has soared past $500 million, making it the most expensive railway ever built. Same trains, 30 times the price. Why so cheap in China and Spain? Industrialization. China builds most of its lines on standardized concrete viaducts, beams mass-produced in factories and lifted into place by launching gantries, the same design repeated for thousands of kilometers. An elevated line also sips land, about 11 hectares per kilometer against 28 for a railway laid on the ground. Spain does the same with standard alignments across low, open plains and very little tunneling. Repetition is what makes it affordable. Britain shows the opposite path. HS2's first phase, from London to Birmingham, became the most expensive passenger railway per kilometer in history. A large part of the bill came from a political compromise, more than 30 miles of deep twin-bore tunnels, dug under hills and suburbs to soothe local objections over noise and views. Worse, construction began in 2020 before the designs were even finished, locking in years of delays, disputes, and ballooning costs. California tells a parallel story. Its first phase was costed at $33 billion in 2008. Today, the estimate has climbed past $126 billion. The deeper flaw is the funding. Instead of one stable, multi-year capital budget, the project leans on year-to-year state revenues and uncertain federal grants, so it can't sign the long contracts that keep work moving, and inflation eats the budget during every delay. Which points to the fourth force, the one that doesn't show up on a map. Building high-speed rail takes decades of stable funding, the legal power to acquire land quickly, and an institution strong enough to manage it all. How a country handles those three things matters as much as any tunnel or train. Compare how the money and the land are arranged. China funds its network through state-backed debt and acquires land directly, with a centralized agency in command. Spain blends its national budget with European Union grants, all coordinated under a single infrastructure manager. India is building its first line on a soft Japanese loan covering most of the cost. And the American projects rely on a patchwork, private equity for Brightline, and fragmented public grants for California. Centralized and stable beats fragmented and uncertain almost every time. In the United States, the law itself can become the obstacle. California's Environmental Review Act, written to protect nature, has been turned into a delay machine. In one case, the wealthy town of Atherton sued to block the line, objecting to the look of overhead electric wires. Resolving such suits takes years, stalls federal funding, and inflates the bill. In 2024, the state finally fought back, passing a law that exempts clean, zero-emission rail from the worst of that review. India faces a different kind of friction. Its first bullet train, the 508-kilometer Mumbai-Ahmedabad line, is built on Japanese Shinkansen technology and a soft loan from Tokyo, covering most of the cost. But in a democratic, federal system, land must be bought from thousands of farmers who can contest the price in court. That resistance pushed the opening from 2023 toward 2027 and inflated the budget along the way. Build the line, and one test remains every single day: the price on the ticket. A high-speed service still has to beat the plane, the car, and the bus, not just on time, but on cost. And here the successful systems share a secret: they are cheap to ride. Look at the fare for each kilometer traveled. On Japan's Tokaido line, about 23 cents. In France, 11. In China, just under 8 cents at full speed, cheaper than flying, which is why rail dominates wherever the trip stays under about 5 hours. Now compare America's Brightline West, which must recover its costs with no public subsidy. Its target fare works out to roughly 55 cents a kilometer, many times higher than its rivals. That gap is the Brightline paradox. To repay its $21 billion cost privately, the line plans to charge well over $100 each way. But budget airlines already fly Los Angeles to Las Vegas for as little as $40, and a family can split the cost of petrol down Interstate 15 for less still. For a private high-speed line to win at that price, it must bet on one thing competitors can't fix: the misery of the highway when it's jammed. Pull it all together, and the lessons are clear. Adopt proven, standardized designs instead of inventing a new system for every line. Build strong public agencies that can manage their own projects, rather than handing control to consultants. Streamline the permits, so a few wealthy objectors can't hold a national project hostage. And above all, secure stable, long-term funding, so work never has to stop and wait for next year's budget. So high-speed rail succeeds not where the trains are fastest, but where four forces line up: the right distance, dense cities, disciplined construction, and patient, stable politics. Where they align, in Japan, in France, across China, rail beats the car and the plane and pays for itself. Where they don't, even the best train in the world runs out of track. If you enjoyed this, stay with us. There's a whole railway still to explore.